Hi, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the DVC Clubhouse show. I am Amy, and joined with me, as always, is Jeff.
Hey, everybody.
And today we have Tina joining us she is coming to us from the Grand Californian in her DVC room. Tina, thank you so much for taking time from your Disneyland vacation to be with us.
Thank you.
So before we jump into our stories here, your Disney backgrounds, tell us a little bit about you, where you live, and a little bit about yourself.
So we live in Arizona. I'm originally from Illinois. I moved there about, I would say 23 years ago. So I've been there since about 2000. My husband is from Canada, and we're a blended family. We have 5 girls between us. They range from 18 to 39. So we have a big spread between our kids. When I married my husband, I think my youngest might have been in kindergarten, and I think his oldest was a sophomore or junior in high school.
Wow.
So we're the modern day Brady Bunch.
I love it.
And so, living in Arizona, um, is Disneyland more of like kind of your home base? Like, I'm from New Jersey, so Disney World is totally my home base. So why don't you give us a little bit about of that background, like your Disney parks background?
Sure. So we came out here, I would guess. Well, I'd only been here one time as a kid. So my parents were kind of those parents, right? That they were a one and done. They brought us out with my aunt. My aunt lived in Arizona. And we came out, I remember, in a motorhome. And it was when there was no California Adventure wasn't here yet, right? And so you could park in the parking lot, like right in front of Disneyland, which is like unheard of these days. But I remember we parked our motorhome in the parking lot at Disneyland and went to Disneyland and slept in the motorhome, like, and then went back and forth. And that's like my childhood memory of Disneyland. And so when my kids were born, we brought them out they were little, so it must have been in like 04, 05, something like that. So they would have been like 1 and 3 maybe. And I saw that it was the Pluto sign, if you remember that sign that said like the best kept secret or something in Disney. And so I went up and talked to the guy at the kiosk and got some of the information about it. And I was just like, I gotta like figure out what this is. Cause we stayed at the Grand Cal, but it was like, we knew it was like a once in a lifetime, like we weren't coming back, you know what I mean, to the Grand Cal. And so I went home and I was just like, the internet was not what it is today. Like I really had to dig and dig and dig to find anything on Disney Vacation Club. And finally I found like a chat board with all of the information on it. And so that's when I figured out you could buy it resale, not just direct from Disney. And in '05, when I started looking, all the benefits were the same. So the point cost was different, but nothing else was different. Like you could buy, it was just like buying direct at that point. So we closed on our first DVC contract in January of '06 for like 120 points. And then we used those points to come to the Grand Cal. Like that was enough to come every other year and stay in the hotel for like, I think it was like 3 or 4 days, something like that, which is a good amount of time to have at Disneyland. And so we kept doing that until, probably about 20, I would say 16, 17, something like that. When our kids got bigger, it got very hard to get very many days together. Once they got into high school and you had fall sports going on, and then one of our daughters had stuff going on all spring. So to get long vacations, except for in the summer, was really hard. So we started doing long weekends, like Fridays to Mondays. And when we started doing that, I was like, well, this would be cool to have passes. We could, sneak away once a quarter with our passes and come to the Grand Cal. So at that point, I was up, at 5 a.m. every day trying to get one day at a time at the Grand Californian. So I did that for a while. I was always successful somehow, some way with my Saratoga points at the Grand Cal.
So
But then figured
I
out
want to clarify that. So when you bought those points, your first contract was the Saratoga Springs contract?
Saratoga Springs contract. Yeah, I don't think there was no Grand Cal. I don't think when I bought in '06, right? It didn't come online until '08 or '09 or something like that, I think. But I think Animal Kingdom and Saratoga was being sold when I bought. And I bought 120 resale. And then I did end up buying 150 Saratoga Springs direct just because I wanted to keep my contract simple, honestly. Like I have one resale contract with Grand Californian for 225 points. It's the only one that I have that is not direct so that it's easier for me to manage it that way. Like these points I only use here, and those other points then I can use, anywhere I want. So, what we did was we bought there was a pass, and I can't remember what it was called, but it's the one everybody complains about now, right? The one that you had to make reservations with. So we bought that pass, and at the time it was such a good deal for us. I think it was like $500 or something. And for $100, you got to add the max pass with it. So you could literally run in and out of both of these parks with that fast pass with your annual pass attached to it. And I think we could make like 2 or 3 park reservations at a time. And there was something about you were limited on weekends. I don't remember, but it was a good deal for us to come like once a quarter. And we don't get really good DVC annual pass discounts out here. We get $20 at the ticket booth. So when everybody's like, I want my DVC pass back at Walt Disney World, us Disneyland people are like, can you just give us a pass? Because the only way to get a DVC discount on your pass out here is you got to physically go to the ticket booth, show them your DVC thing, and then they give you $20 in a discount. That's it. Otherwise, you don't get any DVC discount. But so we did that when our kids were in high school, and then we just popped out here once a quarter and stayed at the Grand Cal and bebopped back and forth, between the parks, and it was awesome.
And so you had mentioned in our previous conversation that so your first contract was 2006 at
Yep.
Saratoga Springs, but you didn't
Yep.
use it in Disney World until 2020.
Yes. So I had 120 points that I bought in 2006. I added on another 150. I don't know. It had to be a good probably 9 or 10 years later. But until August of 2020, so the parks reopened in July, I had never sat foot in a Walt Disney World hotel ever. And in fact, we had only ever been to Walt Disney World one day with our kids ever. And I know that sounds weird, but we took a cruise out of, I think it was Galveston, Texas, when our kids were little. And it came through and stopped at Port Canaveral, and included in your cruise fare was a ticket to Disney World. So when you pulled up to the port that day, they had all these buses parked there waiting to go to all the parks, and you just got off the ship and you got on whatever park bus you wanted to go to, and then they left the ship parked there like until we didn't have to be back on board until like midnight, 1 a.m. or something like that. And so we stayed in the parks all day, and then we came back, and I remember our kids have never forgotten it. We got back on the boat. They had the captain there, and Captain Mickey and Minnie and all the characters like in this like just a promenade, just like waiting for you all to come back in. And then they ushered you up into Cabanas, and Cabanas had this massive spread going on. They had ice sculptures and like prime rib and they had a crepe station and a chocolate station and this like massive spread going on for everybody coming back to the parks. I just remember my kids sat down in like the seats in cabanas and they both went, we're so glad to be back on the ship.
That's amazing. That sounds
So,
awesome.
well, and they were just Disney World was super overwhelming to them when we went.
Yeah.
They were very used to here where the Grand Cal was right here, right? They could come back to the hotel whenever they wanted. They used to run back and forth between California Adventure and Disneyland all day long. They would book a ride over in, Disneyland and then run over to the Grand Cal California Adventure and ride a ride and back and forth. So this Grand Cal was their home base. So we always told them, if you get lost or we get separated, you go to the Grand Californian lobby, we will find you there. So if you're lost, don't freak out. You know how to get to the Grand Cal, go back to home base. So when we got to Disney World, they were just like completely overwhelmed with all of that. And after that, they were like, we don't want to go back there anymore, Mom. And so we didn't until the pandemic hit. And then the pandemic hit, and we were supposed to be checking into the Grand Cal on Friday before it closed on Monday. And we were sitting at home debating, do we stay? Do we go? What do we do? And they made the choice for us because they announced, California was like shutting down. So I called up member services. They refunded all of our points, but I had booked like I think it was 4 or 5 nights in a 2-bedroom. And so then I was just like flooded with all these points with, nothing to do with them because this place stayed closed for a really long time. So in a long time. So in August of 2020, my youngest was probably a sophomore, I think, in high school. My oldest would have been a freshman in college in August of 2020. And so I was like, what are we going to do with all these points? So another one of my gym friend moms, that my youngest daughter, we had been friends with a long time through gymnastics. We were like, why don't we go to Disney World? Because she's a big Disney fan. And I'm like, I think we should go to Disney World. And she's like, are you kidding me right now? In the middle of a pandemic? I'm like, look at the posts online. There's no one there. And so we took the girls on a girls' trip for a week in August, and we distance learned them from Beach Club for a week. And then I was like, well, this worked out really well. So in October, we went back and did it again. And we did it we did one night in the Poly. And then this was a crazy story. So we did one night in the Poly, and I was working from home, obviously working from home from the Poly, right? And so in the morning, I had a conference call with like my entire team on it. Like I had 80 people on this conference call. And the whole time I'm on this call, that boat horn is in the back. And my whole team is like, where are you? Where are you? I'm like, and I'm like, I'm not at Disney World. That's not the boat horn on the lake. That's not the boat. And so we had never stayed at any Disney resorts or anything, right? And so my kids were not really loving Polly. My husband had gotten up early to go golf, and we had a down day that day. So I was like, well, let's just ride the monorail and see where it goes. So we get on the monorail, and the very first stop obviously is Grand Floridian. And my kids are like, wait a minute, what is this hotel? So I'm like, I don't know. So we get off and we walk in, and my kids look at me and go, why aren't we staying here? And I'm like, I don't know, because the Poly had Dole Whip. And so I thought it would be a good idea to book us at the Poly.
That's awesome. I love that.
I mean, literally, I was like, the Poly has Dole Whip. We should stay there. And so we get to Grand Floridian, and I go down to the DVC desk, and I was like, hey, we're at the Poly, but my kids don't really love it. Do you think we could just move here? And the guy was like, well, what would you want? And I was like, well, look, I'm flooded with points, so at least a 1-bedroom. And so he comes back later, and he was like, look, he goes, my boss is so magical. We're just going to move you from the Poly over to here and just not change your points. And I'm like,
Oh my
what?
gosh.
I'm like,
wow.
what? And so my husband's golfing, right? He's not even with us. So the guy's like, just go back to the poly, grab your stuff. We'll have a room ready when you come back. And so I send a text to my husband. I'm like, hey, we're not going back to the poly. When you come back from golfing, go to the Grand Floridian. And he's like, what do I do? I'm like, literally the guy at the DVC desk just says, mention my name and he'll take care of you. My husband's like, what? So he gets there first and he goes to the DVC desk. He goes, hey, I'm here with Tina. And the guy goes, oh, yeah, we're going to take care of you. My husband's like, what just happened?
That is hilarious. And but like the irony is that you had all of these points to burn through, so you were kind of like, let me burn through
I
these
know.
points, and they're like, "Yeah, you keep them."
They were like, but they knew what they were doing, right? I mean, once we
Yeah.
stayed in a one, they're not dumb. Once we stayed in a one bedroom at the Grand Floridian, like nothing really else compared, right? I mean, we moved then we didn't stay there we stayed there for like 3 days, I think. And then I had a reservation for a 2 bedroom at Beach Club because at the time, the stuff over by Beach Club and in that area was more open. Whereas the Grand Floridian, I think the only restaurant open in that whole hotel at the time might have been like Gasparilla's Grill or something. There was like nowhere to go eat. And so I was like, well, don't cancel my beach club reservation because at that point, I also had a college student distant learning and she wasn't going into the parks during the day. And I was like, if there's nowhere for her to eat here, then I would prefer to move to Beach Club. So we did end up moving to Beach Club for the rest of, the piece I had booked. But we spent like 3 days in that one bedroom. And after that, when we went to Beach Club, my kids were like, we want to go back. We want to go back to Grand Floridian.
Yeah, they got
So
a taste of the high life over there.
yes, exactly right. So, and that's how eventually I ended up with points. We added on when they did the that sale of the second Grand Floridian. That's how I ended up with I have 300 points there now for that resort. And we earmarked those points. So what we're doing in May is I have a week in a grand villa with my husband's oldest daughter and all of her kids. So and my kids and their like significant others. So I have like 11 people going in May into Grand Villa for a week at Grand Floridian. So I'm excited.
That'll be
That
so
is
cool.
exciting. That is going
Yeah.
to be so fun and like just the greatest memories ever.
Oh my gosh, we're going to have so much fun. And somehow I got blessed to be that new DVC like concierge service that they started. I don't know if you've seen people talking about it like on
Yeah.
Facebook pages, but so I got an email about that and like a lot of other people I thought it was just junk. And then they called me one day and were like, "Hey, we're starting this new service. We want to know if you want to try it." And so finally I figured out like what it was. And so instead of me getting up and doing dining reservations and cabana reservations and all of that, I got on the phone with one of those guys and was like, "Hey, I want these reservations for these days for these restaurants." And like magic, it just showed up on the day that my dining reservations like came open. They just showed up in my Disney Experience app.
Wow.
And
That's
they even
amazing.
booked the cabanas for me. So I have 2 cabanas for 2 days at the Grand Floridian and they booked them for me. I didn't have to call member services. So I feel
Wow, that's
very
amazing.
spoiled on this trip now.
For sure. That's crazy.
Like,
You
I
are
feel
just
so
constantly
spoiled.
getting sprinkled with pixie dust.
I'm like, don't tell
So I
anyone.
wanted to just go back and just comment on when you were talking about being at Grand Cal and like the difference, like how your kids were like so overwhelmed by Disney World. I took my first trip to Disneyland in November of 2022. And that was one of like the things that I loved the most is like to your point, we totally like bopped around from
Yes.
park to park, back to the hotel. Like if we needed to charge or if we just felt like tired,
Yeah.
we'd go back into the room for an hour, then go back into the parks. And it was, I loved that being able to do that. And even, I feel like even if you're at Magic Kingdom, I mean, maybe you kind of get that feeling by going to
Yeah.
Bay Lake Tower, but having the two parks right there and having just minutes, a minutes away walk to get to
Yes.
your room was so awesome, and really just kind of gives you this like just like a cozier kind of
Yes.
closely knit type of atmosphere versus Disney World, where it's like you want to get back to your room and you might get there in an hour and a half from
2
the
hours
time you made
later.
the
Yeah.
decision. It's like you need to be committed to get back to your room. You have to know that that's what you want to do because it takes a
That's
long
going to
time.
happen, right? Yeah.
You really, if you really want to have a nap, like that has to be your goal if you're going back to the room. Like, to your point, it's I tell all my friends when they start planning Disney World trips from Utah and they're Disneyland veterans, I'm like, you need to come sit in my dining room. We need to have a talk because you guys don't know what you're doing yet. Oh,
No.
we've done Disney 1,000 times. I'm like, you haven't. I promise. Like it is such and it's equally awesome. Like they each have their pros
Yes.
and cons, but people that have only ever been to Disneyland don't know what they're in for.
No.
And vice
Well,
versa. If you're Disney World or going to Disneyland, sometimes you're disappointed because you're like, this is it?
you're
Like,
like,
where is
what?
everything?
Yeah, and see, we loved it because even Disney Springs, right? Our version of Disney Springs is right outside of the Grand Cal too. So if you want to pop out and get a pizza and just come back into your room, you can. I mean, we even have gone out to Flo's. They have fried chicken at Flo's, and my husband loves that in DCA. And so we've even gone to Flo's, gotten fried chicken, and brought it back to our villa and eaten it, out of all the crowds, like in our villa. So, I mean, our MO all the time was we would get up, we would go to the parks, we would have lunch somewhere, then we would come back, and my kids would sleep until like dinner time. They would sleep from 1 until like 6 o'clock at night, something like that. We would get, and we would be make the whole time that was happening, we would be making ride reservations through our Max Pass, right? Because you could come back to the hotel, sit in the hotel, and every like I think it was every hour, every 2 hours or something like that, you could make a ride reservation. So we would spend the whole afternoon chilling in our hotel room, go out, have dinner, and then we'd have our entire night just stacked full of rides until midnight, until the park closed. And we would close the parks out until midnight, riding all these fast pass rides. And we would just be, spinning from DCA to Disneyland all night long.
Well, and even
Because you
that
can do that.
you can, and even if you're not staying on property, like across the street on Harbor is not far. It's like
No.
walking to Bay Lake Tower from Magic Kingdom.
Yes,
And
it is.
if
It
you're
is.
doing Disney on a budget, like there's a McDonald's right there. There's
Yep.
like it can be a pretty inexpensive trip. There's no way you could do that at Disney World.
No, no. And that
So
is the different out here, right? Is you don't have to stay at the Grand Cal because those other hotels are still closer than the Walt Disney World hotels for sure. But being almost inside the park in your hotel is like just
yeah.
I mean, we have
Yeah.
that white water ride is like right outside of, the entrance into Grand Cal. We have literally dressed our kids in their swimsuits, taken them to ride that ride, and then brought them back into the hotel and changed them into dry clothes and then went back out into the park. Like, you can't do that if you don't stay here.
No, no, absolutely. And and coming from New Jersey, the time change can kind of get to
Yes.
me. And so I get tired. And so if it's like 7 o'clock at night, it's like bedtime for me,
Yep.
and I went, like my kids and we went back and we had dinner. We went back to the room. I took a nap and set my alarm so that I could wake up to go watch World of Colors. And I was kind of like still in like my lounge clothes. I didn't really like, I knew I was just going to
Yeah.
watch it and go back. So I was like kind of like low key in my pajamas, but I was just like, oh, I'm going to go because you can
She
go
was in
right
her
into that.
pajamas
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I totally
for
was.
sure.
Because you can go into that Pixar Pier entrance now too. So I just um walked down there and got myself a spot. And because I was by myself, because my kids were like they were okay with not seeing it, I was by myself. So the cast member was like, "Oh, I'll let you come down and sit in premium seating." So I was like there in my pajamas watching it. And then when it was done, I went right back up to my room, got back into bed. But it was like so perfect because it was so close and there was no, even from Beach Club to Epcot, like would have been a more you know, more of a walk. Like it just was so close. And I did, Jeff had recommended one of the hotels, like not on property for me. And it was great because it was so close and it was, for our first night, we stayed there. But staying at the Grand Cal was like it was really special. Like yeah,
It's
and I
cool.
mean walking into that area of California Adventure where Grizzly River Run is,
Yeah.
it just like it goes so well with the theming of the hotel. Like that whole thing was just so well done. Like you really feel
Yeah.
like you're staying in a national park and that you're like
Yep.
walking out into the park from the hotel. But the pool there is gorgeous. Like everything
Yeah.
just is gorgeous. And people are like, "Oh, when you look at the pictures, people compare it to Wilderness Lodge." And yes,
Yeah.
they both
Yeah.
are rustic, but there is this majestic quality about the Grand Cal that it's just like it is like Wilderness Lodge like on steroids.
It's so
That
cool.
that fireplace and like that hearth around it, like it's just massive. Like everything just feels big there. And it's so cool. I absolutely I can't wait to go back and just take and I mean when we were there, I have very bad luck. Anytime I go to Southern California, it rains. Um, and so it like monsooned while we were there. So the day that I had been planning to spend at the pool, that it was like 45 degrees and wind was like rain was
I was
blowing
going to
by
say,
me.
and that would have been cold. That would have been really cold.
It was so cold, and so I did not get to take advantage of the pool there. So I definitely I'm looking forward to going back. But it was also kind of nice, like to have that weather, but then be in this lobby with the fireplaces. Like it just felt so
Yes.
cozy.
Yes. And they have really
It's
good hot
really
cocoa
just.
here.
Oh yeah, yeah. There was
They do.
the hot cocoa was delicious. Um, but yeah, I think that if any for anybody who hasn't experienced Disneyland, like clearly because it's the original, you should definitely go anyway. But because it's just such a more manageable, like I was just in Disney World last week, and I mean, I was walking like 30,000 steps a day. It's like you get back and like you just feel like you're dead. Now, I did do a lot of walking in Disneyland, but again, like it's like a
It's a,
different
yeah.
scale. And
Yeah.
something that I found about Disneyland, which is different in Disney World, is that there are so many more places to sit and relax. Like there are
Yes.
benches and tables. Like in Disney World, it's like hard to find a place to just like
Yes.
relax.
Yes. It's getting harder. I mean, I have never seen the parks as full as they are now. And I mean, I feel like we used to kind of figure out when the parks were full and when they were not. I mean, for some reason, always in California, Sunday evening in Disneyland for us was always the best time to be in the parks because it must have been when everybody was leaving because you could literally walk on and off rides all night long. And I feel like now you're not seeing those kind of little bits of moments where the parks aren't as full anymore. It feels like it's all full to me. And in fact, this time, honestly, we didn't even do park days because we're going to be in Disney World in April with my daughter. And then we have the family trip at Disney World in May. And so, with the price of tickets now out here, if you just want to do like a couple of days, you know what I mean? We don't have our passes anymore. We let them go, and it's crazy expensive to do it. So we're like, we're just gonna come hang. We're gonna go to the Grand Cal. My daughter has a competition out here this week, so while everybody else is at hotels over there, we're at the Grand Californian in a one bedroom.
Well, and yeah, to that point, I remember January was the best time to go to Disneyland
January is
because,
awesome out
yeah,
here.
but even now, it's not near as light crowds as it used to be. Like, I just sent
No.
some friends there last week, and like the last week of February is usually fantastic, and they said
Yes.
it was a madhouse.
Yeah.
So,
We used to come out even because the flights from Arizona are like an hour long. They're not very long at all. And before the pandemic, you could get a flight to Anaheim, like, direct into Anaheim for sometimes less than $100 round trip.
same
And
with
so
us, yeah.
Yeah. And so we used to just on our passes, we would fly out on the first flight in the morning, spend the whole day in the parks, and then fly out on that last flight at night. And I don't even know if you did that now with this full, as the parks are, if you would even be able to get around. It would
Yeah.
be, I think it would be hard. But, at the time we were doing it, we would fly in. First thing we would do is, 10 o'clock in the morning, go get a corn dog from the red cart and then start our day. I mean, I'd be like, girls, what do you want to do? And they're like, we need a corn dog from the trolley cart.
I don't know, those breakfast burritos in that cart by Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, like,
They're good.
oh wait, they're not burritos. What are they? They're like
They're
chimichangas or something?
chimichangas, I think is what yeah,
Like
chimichangas.
life changing. I'm like, there's
They're good.
nothing at any sort of like cart or quick service in Disney World that is as delicious as this.
No,
I dream about
we
them.
are very, we are very spoiled. We have very good food out here, and so when
Disneyland's
we went,
Disneyland's quick service is on point. Like it is. It's amazing.
like, it's ridiculous what you can get at a quick serve restaurant out here, like Pim's Kitchen. The
Hmm.
last I came to the DVC event, and Pim's Kitchen had like a grilled shrimp salad, like something you would get like at a fancy restaurant. Like, I'm sitting, in DCA and Pim's eating this like shrimp salad. I'm like, wow, Pim's.
All
That's
right, so
awesome.
you've stayed at Grand Cal, Beach Club, Polynesian, and Grand Floridian. What other
Yep.
DVC resorts have you stayed at?
Only one. I've stayed at Boardwalk, and that's it. Um, and then what my daughter, I just so every spring break, my oldest daughter, I give her and her boyfriend a trip somewhere for Christmas, and it's their spring break trip that I give them. So I just sent them to Alani for spring break. So they've been
Nice.
to Alani now, but we have not been
They
to
got to
Alani.
go
So it's
before
still,
you. That doesn't seem right.
they did. I feel like I get mom points for that. I want
You
some.
do. It's true.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, you definitely do. So what is on your DVC bucket list then?
So I don't know if it's DVC, but I have always wanted to do like one of those VIP tours. The ones with like the guys in the plaid vests. I mean, it's like that's what I have been like researching forever, trying to figure out. I mean, I even joined a Facebook page. I think it was this year. There's a VIP like tours Facebook page where people go and share them. Like, if you don't have like 10 people or whatever in a group, people post the ones that they have booked, and then you can go, be part of their tour. So that's kind of like my like bucket list kind of thing. I was going to do it for our big family trip, but I think when I looked at it, the rates went up so high, they're almost like $900 like an hour or something, and you
Yeah.
have to book like seven, some hours or something at a time. And I was like, okay, so we can't check that off on this trip.
Yeah.
That's my number one on my bucket list as well.
Is
We should
Yeah,
just get a group together and do it.
and do it. That would
Yeah.
be
I
fantastic.
have done it, and it was amazing, and it was actually a perk. When I was still married, it was my ex-husband, he got it from a Disney rep. He Google was one of his clients, and they did a big deal, and so as a thank you, they knew that we were going to Disney, so they gave us the VIP tour, and
Oh,
I
that's so
wasn't even
cool.
sure what he was like very vague on the details about like what we were doing. He's like, "Oh, we're supposed to be meeting some guy." And then and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, we have small children. Like, what are we doing here?"
We're gonna meet some guy.
And then when I saw the guy, yeah, and then when I saw the guy, I was like, "Oh, you didn't tell me that he was going to be showing up in a plaid vest and his big D pin." I was like, "I Yes, yes, please, and thank you." And it was amazing, and it was great. I mean, we did everything at Hollywood Studios and Magic Kingdom um in like a 6 hour time frame. It was amazing. And it was great because again, we had little kids, so it was like we did so much, and then they were like we could have kept we actually ended before the time, but my kids were done. We did a lot, but it was awesome. And I think it would be great to get a group of people together and do
Oh, I
that with
think that would
a
be
bunch of
so
people. It'd be
fun.
so fun.
You guys could check off my bucket list for me. I'm like, oh.
That'd be awesome.
So because you have are there any other of the DVC resorts at Disney World that you are wanting to stay at, or do you see yourself basically staying within the like Grand Floridian or?
We tend to be, we tend to be very creatures of habit, right? Like we gravitate back to what we know for some reason and what we're all comfortable with. But I think I would like to try the Riviera. I think their 2-bedroom over there looks amazing. Their Grand Villa looks amazing. We've steered away from purposely, honestly, from like Copper Creek and Boulder Ridge, and those resorts only because they looked very similar to Grand Cal. And since we've been to, we spend so much time here, we kind of wanted to do something different when we got, to Disney World. But I do think I would like to stay at Riviera. We've been over there and, and toured those rooms. I couldn't bring myself to buy there because of resale restrictions. I can't imagine I will ever sell, but for some reason, my little finance brain was like, you can't do it. You can't do it. So, and that's how I always ended up with so many Saratoga Springs points, is because when originally, right, many years ago, when you did the math, like the math, Saratoga kind of always came out on top. And so my little finance brain was like, well, okay, then you got to buy Saratoga. Only the problem was I got so exhausted trying to book them all the time here that I was like, okay, I need Grand Cal points. Like this isn't going to work.
So do you see yourself using your points ever to go to like Vero Beach or Hilton Head?
I don't know if I will, but my daughter and I that I do the spring break for trip, we have already started talking about next year. And we may book her at a Vero Beach or a Hilton Head for next year. So because what we didn't realize about Hawaii is, and we started reading this online, so my poor daughter and her boyfriend, right? I send them to Alani. They get there on Sunday. They're leaving on Thursday. On Tuesday morning, my daughter got really sick, like crazy sick. And we thought it was just like something she ate. Well, her boyfriend then got it like 24 hours later. So their poor Alani trip did not turn out the way they wanted. The
Oh
last picture,
no.
That's too bad.
the la- this is going to be really funny in 10 years, but it's not funny now. So the last picture I got from her was they had to check out, and those flights back to the mainland are like overnight. So you fly at like 11 o'clock at night and we get into Phoenix at like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. So it's noon now, and they've had to check out of their hotel where her boyfriend is still sick and throwing up. So the last photo I have is the two of them laying on Alani's grass with his head in the bushes throwing up. That's the last photo I have from her, from Alani.
Oh man, that is awful.
That is such a bummer.
It is such a bummer. And when we started talking to her about next year, she's like, we don't want to go to Hawaii again, Mom. So I was like, well, why don't we do like Hilton Head or Vero Beach? I'm like, those look really cool. I think you guys would have a really good time there. And so I think next year that's where I'm gonna send them.
Yeah, I think Hilton Head would be fun for them because like Vero tends to be like I love them both, but there's not a lot to do out like immediately in the Vero area. Like the closest restaurants and stuff is like 15 to 20 minutes
Oh
away.
man, okay.
But Hilton Head is like you've got a ton of restaurants and bars and just
Perfect.
so much to do. Like I think that for their age range, Hilton Head would be a
Oh, but
lot of
yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
I love it there too.
One year I sent them here to the Grand Cal to Disneyland because he had never been to Disneyland, and they had such a good time. They had a blast. So it'll probably be either there or back here to Disneyland for next year.
Well, and it seems like you mentioned golf, and your husband golfs and stuff. It seems like you guys would dig Hilton Head. Isn't Hilton Head like golf central?
Yeah, there are a
Is
lot
it?
of golf courses. Yeah. And one of the there's a a tournament, I think a TPC tournament that happens there
Oh,
around Easter. It's sometime in April, every year in Sea Pines.
Gotcha.
Not that we're trying to get you to spend your points elsewhere, but that's what we're here for.
Are you just trying to get me to blow my 800 points somewhere?
We've got great ideas. You have a lot of points. We could use them really well.
Well, and since I used to be like a point miser, you know what I mean? Even with 800 points, like I never wanted to be borrowed into the next year. I was using, this year's every year. And after the pandemic, I was like, it's open season now. I am borrowed as far as I can freaking borrow every year now. I'm just like, I think for 2024 right now, I have 30 points left.
I'm getting close to that myself. I've almost borrowed all of my 2024.
Yeah. I'm like, now my perspective very much changed.
I've been a DVC member since 2002, and I've always been pretty much in a state of borrowing.
Yeah. My whole perspective after the pandemic very much changed. And then I was like, by math, I'm going to be like 90 when some of these resorts retire. Am I really going to be like at 89 going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm out of points? Like I borrowed my last year's points and I'm 89 and I can't go? I don't think so. So I feel like.
I laugh because whenever people talk about, because I own a beach club, which, expires in 2042. And every time people talk about, well, what are you going to do in 2042? I'm like, it's really going to be 2041 because I'm going to have borrowed.
You're going to be borrowed.
Them all in 2041. So I'm going to be done a year early.
That's going to be me. I'm totally with you, girl. I'm just like, because I got so flooded with all those points. I'm like, okay, we're not doing that again. We're just borrowing.
Exactly. Just seize the day.
Seize the day. Well, and I purposely did it this year with my Grand Cal points because I'm hoping at some point they finally refurbish this hotel. Like, I love, love, love this hotel, but it really it's tired. I mean, it's been here a long time. And so I'm kind of trying to pull all my points now and rest this hotel for a year or so and see if we get finally on the refurb list.
Yeah, I agree. That was the one thing I noticed. It would be nice to freshen it up a bit.
Yeah. I mean, even with the new tower coming out here, you won't get me over to that other hotel. I will I'm a Grand Californian like diehard, but
I don't know, that 3-bedroom villa at the Disneyland Hotel, I feel like I could move in there tomorrow and be pretty comfortable.
like I think I could do okay at the 3-bedroom.
So we like to wrap up our interviews with talking about a memory, because we spend so much time talking about the things that we love that it's fun to kind of talk about, like, vacation memories that may not make our highlight reel.
Yeah.
And well, it sounds like your daughter's Alani experience is definitely one of them.
Oh, definitely.
But what about, are there any other um trips that you can think of where things just maybe didn't go to as planned, or weren't really the
Oh, yes.
highlights?
Oh, yes. So we came out here for a gymnastics meet. It's been several years ago. And the other mother that is big into Disney, like I am, we decided that we had all the team, we got everybody matching, shirts to come in to Disneyland, right? And so we rope dropped with the whole gymnastics team and did the parks all day long. And it was when Food and Wine was going on, and so we thought, oh, this is going to be so cool. By that point the team had kind of split up and it was just kind of her and I and our kids at that point. And so we were like, oh, this is so cool, it's Food and Wine, we'll buy everybody the Food and Wine pass. We were annual pass members, so we got the discount and all of that. And so we get all of these tickets, and my kids are very used to a sit down meal at Disneyland and at home, honestly. So we always really tried to always have dinner sitting at the table, even if it was 10 o'clock at night. We did the same thing always when we vacationed. So we always sat them down to dinner. This time we decided we were going to eat at this Food and Wine, and we're all excited, and we're eating around. And finally my youngest daughter goes, Mom, when is dinner? And the gal I was with, we both looked at them, we're like, this is dinner. And she, oh my gosh, so unexpectedly, she just literally had a meltdown right there. I mean, she was probably 15 or so, 14 or 15 at the time. She literally had a meltdown. She goes, "This is not dinner. A snack on top of a trash can is not dinner. Dinner is sitting down with a plate and a real napkin and a real knife and fork." She's like, "This is not dinner." And we were all like, "What's happening right now?"
Oh, I love it.
And worse than that, so she had the meltdown. My daughter has this massive meltdown. My friend's daughter takes one look at her having the meltdown and completely follows suit. I mean, completely just has the same. So January and I, this other poor mother, we're standing there just looking at our kids like, all right, we found the breaking point. We broke them. We're like, she looks at me, she goes, "What are you going to do?" I'm like, "I'm going to go find dinner. Like, I'm going to go find some."
Sit down and have dinner.
I'm like, "I'm going to go find somewhere to sit down and have dinner with a real knife and a fork and a napkin, I guess." But we were so excited because we're like, "This is gonna be so cool. We've never been here for food and wine." You know what I mean? Oh yeah, she was not having it. And to this day, we remind her, we're like, "Remember when you had the meltdown at Food and Wine?"
It's hilarious. And it's like,
she'll kill me when she sees this. She's gonna be like, "Mom, I can't believe you told that story."
but it's seriously like those are the moments that as parents, like we do all of this planning and we feel like excited about things. And then all of a sudden, like our kids have totally different ideas of what's fun or what they want to do, or,
Yes.
something unexpected happens. And it's just, and meltdowns ensue. I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like in addition to being like the happiest place on earth or the most magical place on earth, Disneyland and Disney World are probably also like the meltdown capitals.
Oh, for sure. Right? Yes.
It's, when the magic wears off, we're left with meltdowns.
It wells off hard. Right? It wears off really hard.
I remember one time we were at the Hungry Bear restaurant right there by the artist formerly known as Splash Mountain. And
Yep.
we were having like the best time. It was the best experience, like one of our best Disneyland trips ever. And I'm in line behind this guy, and I can just see as the line moves closer to the cash register, his happiness scale is going down, 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 right? Well, I go to pick up my tray, and I got mine before his, and I was getting ketchup and stuff, and he comes up to me. I don't know him at all, and he just looks at me and he's like, "I am in Disney hell." And threw his stuff and walked away, and I was like, "I'm sorry. I didn't. What did I do? It wasn't my fault."
Oh my God.
So it can turn on a dime for sure.
Yeah, it certainly can.
Like without
I-
warning. It was totally
Yeah.
without warning.
Yeah. I had my daughter and I had an experience. We were in Disney World over the holidays, and I don't remember exactly all of the details, but she and I kind of disagreed about something, and she got annoyed at me and she stormed, and I really wanted to watch ride Living with the Land to see the holiday overlay, and she just didn't really care about it. And I think that might have been part of the argument. And so she said something, I kind of snapped at her, and she stormed off ahead of me and is
Oh no.
just walking towards Living with the Land. And so she got there, a minute or two before me. And in that minute or two, I, was able to take a deep breath and calm down. And I I arrive, and she's standing at the entrance to the ride with her arms crossed and looking at me. And I just looked at her and I started laughing, and I said, "Are you done?"
Like,
And then fortunately she started laughing, and then we rode Living with the Land. But you know, it was just one of those magical Disney moments.
oh my gosh. They're everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much for your time, taking time out of your Disneyland trip. Is there any words of wisdom or anything, any last words that you want to share with our viewers before we sign off?
I would just say if you're thinking about doing it, doing it. I mean, when I bought in, we didn't buy very many points. We bought 120, but it was what we could afford at the time. But it made all the difference to just take the plunge and do it, way back then, because we've gotten so much good out of all of these points. And my kids, are already getting so much use out of them because it seems we're probably a good example of the way it's moving, it's aging with our family, it's growing with our family. Because I mean, we don't necessarily do a lot of park, and we probably won't maybe for a few years, a lot of park big vacations. But now instead my kids are going, right? Like if I go and do something different, they're still coming with their friends, or we're gifting them and taking a whole group of them together. I love that now my kids can use them on spring break, right? Because I mean, my kids don't necessarily always want to vacation with us anymore, right? Like they're getting older, they have, boyfriends and that kind of thing that they don't see. And so I get it. They want to, be with them and the friends they haven't seen in a long time. And so now we can use these points to, send them to places we wouldn't. Like, do you really think I would send my junior daughter to Alani if I didn't have DVC points, right? I mean, people are like,
Right.
wow, you sent your daughter to Hawaii for spring break. They think that, I like spent this massive fortune, when the truth is, I bought her a ticket, I bought her a flight to Alani, and then used my DVC points that I bought, years ago to support the hotel room, which is not something I would have done if we didn't have these points. So, I mean, my advice is just if you're thinking about do it, buy what you can afford and, go from there.
I love that. That's perfect. That's sound advice for sure.
Well, on that note, thank you to everyone for tuning in and watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you've stayed at the Grand Californian or you are an owner there, comment below. So until next time, we'll DVC you real soon.